Good morning, everyone. If you could please take your seat, we are ready to begin the second day of the Human Rights in Childbirth Conference. I hope you had a good night's sleep because we have a full day ahead of us. I want to start by saying just a few brief things that I forgot yesterday. I would like to encourage you to translate your work. It's very important. Because of the diversity of languages in our region, sometimes we don't know what's happening next door. And it's very important for us to know, to get inspired by others in the region, because the problems that we face, as we saw yesterday, are very similar. It's also important for people outside of the region to realize that it doesn't matter that we joined the European Union or that we are in Europe, we're still facing some very serious challenges, and it helps us, Human Rights in Childbirth, to advocate on behalf of the region as well if we have that information available in English. And I don't see Zuzana Kriskova today, but she really helped me with information about Slovakia. It was really just a few pages, but it really helped. So I would like to encourage you to do that. I know that resources are limited, but please realize the value of this for foreign researchers, for foreign advocates, just to have that information in English, and for all of us to be able to share work that we are doing just to understand what is going on. The second message is we have various forms of ways to connect with each other. And you're going to receive an email, so you don't have to write anything down, but there's a Google group for people working in Eastern Europe where we can exchange information. We can basically tell each other what's going on in the countries. If there is an urgent action, we can gather support, or if we're looking for information from other countries, we can ask. We have a Facebook group for Eastern Europe. Specifically, it's Human Rights in Childbirth Eastern European branch. We have a Human Rights in Childbirth Facebook group for human rights in general, human rights in childbirth in general. So there are various ways to connect with each other after the conferences. So you will receive an email with that information. Just be on the lookout and join those groups. And now we would explore local accountability mechanisms for violations of human rights in childbirth. And I know that this is a topic that everyone is really interested in. So I would present Nora Shimsi, who is she is a doula from Hungary, and she will be moderating the first panel. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you slept well and are refreshed and excited. I am. So I'm Nora Simcsik. I'm a doula in Budapest, in Hungary. I'm also a hypnobirthing childbirth educator. I also support women postpartum as a postpartum doula and breastfeeding peer counselor. I am also a client-centered counselor, working mainly with women who are survivors of trauma, either trauma in childbirth or they have difficulty preparing for their childbirth because they are survivors of child sexual abuse or rape or domestic abuse and so on. I really love to work in support groups. When women in circles meet and share their stories, we often see that there are patterns that repeat themselves. Oh, I'm not alone with my story. 7 of us, of the 10, we share things together. Oh, maybe this is something with the society or the maternity system that is wrong. Maybe it wasn't me being responsible all alone for what happened with me. And this experience of mine made me to join ICAN, which is the International Caesarean Awareness Network. And I started a local chapter in Hungary. This is a volunteer-based, non-profit NGO that works similarly to Laleche League with local groups of women meeting regularly and sharing their stories. I could go on and on about my journey related to birth, how I happened to sit here, but I decided that I am going to talk a little bit about a previous chapter in my life when I was an economist and I studied psychology. I studied psychology of decision-making, organizational behavior, how to counsel organizations to achieve change. And I worked for 10 years at a multinational company in a customer care department. In various roles, I've been team leader, I've been teaching other team leaders how to coach their team members. And after a while, I've been training our new hires how to care for customers better, which made me actually a very terrible customer, because I happen to have expectations. I feel entitled. This results a lot of written complaints, actually, but I feel good, because what I learned at this company, this was a company that had no products, no physical goods, just services, which meant that we needed to understand people, our own employees and our customers, and to work together and communicate effectively, which resulted also in effective management. So I really felt good at this company because of the culture. It was very different culture from what I see anywhere else in my country, or I think in Eastern Europe in general. We are very afraid in Hungary to document if there was a mistake. This is something embarrassing. We would rather not speak about it, avoid mentioning, avoid facing the fact. We hate statistics, so the documented, the written reality is usually very different from the real Hungary, the verbal Hungary, the informal, unofficial Hungary. Just an example, if a birth happens at the 43rd week in a hospital, that doesn't happen. The dates will be recalculated. Oh, we made a mistake, this was a birth happening on the 42nd week. So there will be no trace of it. That is not supposed to happen. You know, you know what I'm talking about. It seems that to be a Hungary-specific issue. So anyway, at this company, I learned that complaint from a customer is a fantastic opportunity. A complaint is not something to avoid, to be ashamed of, to maybe try to convince the customer not to document that complaint, but to encourage, oh, you haven't been satisfied. Tell us, let us learn from you. You are doing us a great service right now, and you are doing other customers a great service right now. And we do want to make you feel happy with our service, because we indeed strive for excellence. This is our goal. This is why we are here. So your call or your email or whatever, it's not annoying us, but we are so happy that you took the time of your precious time to tell us how we could do better. And I so hope that state-run systems like the healthcare or maternity care we are so interested in could adopt this kind of culture change. So let's talk about it. Our panel's topic today is about local accountability mechanisms. And I was wondering if you agree with me, I don't know. I wanted to ask our presenters whether they are happy to maybe take a tiny little bit less time than they planned to, like 13 minutes instead of their 15, and spare those two to maybe open up the space for a question or maybe reflect to each other's presentations, only if you are happy about it. Okay? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so our first speaker is Marie-Claire Balam, who is a researcher from the UK and who focuses on experiences of women and who is going to tell us about the Babies Born Better survey.
Just find my... Just bear with me a minute. Right. Can somebody tell me if I'm speaking too fast? I tend to speak quite quickly, so... Okay. So I'm delighted to be invited to come and speak here. What I want to talk to you today about is the survey we're running, which is across Europe and actually a little bit wider. We have contributors from beyond Europe as well. Oh, speak up. Okay, right. I'll try and speak up and speak slowly. Is that better? Okay. It's too much pressure this time in the morning already. Okay, so I want to talk about this large survey we're doing, which what I'm hoping is that it can be of use to people in this room, activists, people beyond this, because as I'll show you, it's developed in such a way that I think it's becoming increasingly helpful to people like yourselves as a way of accessing women's views, but I'll talk more about it. So what I'm going to do basically is try and give you a very quick, but speaking slowly, overview. So just a bit about how we set it up, what's involved, not so much about the results, but just to start to give you an idea. And I'm really happy afterwards if people want to talk to me. I'm happy for people to get involved. There's a number of people here who have been absolutely vital in getting this going, translating, supporting us. So it's to thank them as well, because, as they say, without them it wouldn't be possible. So the background, the survey came out of a cost action, which is an EU-funded networking grant that we got 4 years ago now, which was Changing Childbirth Cultures and Consequences. It's a pan-European research project's wrong really, it's a networking tool. So we got together over 4 years, developed a range of projects, and kind of network, got people in different countries together, got people across countries together, and from this developed the BBB survey. So this is just an example of this is our Facebook page, our I Research for Birth Facebook page, which we're using at the moment to promote stuff about the survey. It will eventually have its own page, but that's where we're promoting it. And how it came about was one of the principles of the cost action was the theory of salutogenesis. So focusing on well-being, the well-being of populations, of women, of babies, of families. So it was a lot of it was about how do we find what works, not focus on what doesn't work. So it's the opposite of the medicalized, pathological model. It was saying what works for whom in what circumstances, so a bit of that realist approach, but looking for what works, what can we learn, where is the good practice that we can learn from and spread, so that kind of salutogenic model. For example, colleagues developed a tool of reporting post-childbirth, so instead of saying what degree tear did you have, they'd say who has an intact perineum. So it's just that kind of flipping things about. So we were looking for good practice across Europe. And so that was the idea. We were going to look at where women had positive experiences of childbirth across Europe and then say, okay, most people in Holland have said this hospital, this midwife service is brilliant. Then we'll go and look and find out what they're doing that makes it so brilliant. So that was the idea behind it. But obviously, while you're looking for good practice, you come across really poor practice as well. So we may be going out there looking for great practice, but we also come across women going, this was appalling, this was done to me, this is terrible. So it works together in this kind of symbiotic, we're looking for good practice, but we're finding both. And we realised as the 4 years developed and as more colleagues came from different countries, just the variety of experiences across Europe. You know, we're Europeans, but the childbirth cultures and the differences were really, really staggering, I think. So that was really interesting and helped us kind of move it forward. So from that, we were saying, well, how can we capture this? We've had 4 years of talking to each other and working. What do we need to do now? So that was the idea of then to develop the survey. Am I all right? Am I going too fast or am I okay? Ooh, I don't know. Okay, so just very briefly, the survey, it's hosted on SurveyMonkey, which I believe is a great tool. I'm not very IT friendly, so apparently it's great. I've done little bits on it. So it's hosted on SurveyMonkey, but it was accessed through a portal, which was the IR4B website, which was the website linked to our cost action. You went to the cost action, and then you get on the right, so you go into our IR4B site, you get a list of the different languages in which you can fill in the survey, you click on your language, you're taken to a SurveyMonkey survey, you fill it in. Lovely. Somebody else did that, not me, obviously. Now, it was collaboratively designed, which was interesting, as you can imagine, a whole bunch of people trying to agree what we wanted. And the idea behind it was to keep it very simple, in that if it's relatively short and relatively simple, more women will fill it in. If you have 25 pages, nobody's going to fill it in, nobody has time. So keep it short, keep it simple, keep it so women will fill it in and will engage with it. So that it was purposely designed that way. Some of it was linked to this idea, you probably have it, we have it in the UK, you probably have it here, which is called the Friends and Family Test, which is, would you recommend the hospital, the place of care, to if your sister was having a baby, would you recommend where you had your baby to them? So this idea of very kind of simple way of asking people. So it's 24 questions, there's a mixture of yes and no, multiple choice and free text, which is the interesting bit. So what it gathers is some basic demographic data. How old are you? How many children have you had? So it's about your last baby. Where did you have the baby? How many weeks when you had the baby? Were there any problems? But then it also asks things like, what were the 3 best things? What 3 words would you describe about the best things? What 6 words would you describe about your overall experience? And then there's free text so people can write more about their experience, because obviously yes, no and drop down's not enough, so we give them the opportunity to speak, to express. And also something I think is very important and that we're going to work with more, we also asked women if they were willing to be involved, for us to get back to them, to be involved in further research. So there was a bit that said, if you're willing to be involved in further research, give us your email. And that's disaggregated from the data. So the data set is confidential, but we have a separate, disaggregated set of emails. And the majority of women have said, yeah, great, get back to me, which is amazing, because we've had nearly 30,000 women respond. And about 70% have said, yeah, get back to us. So it's fantastic. So there's been no money for the project. So what we did, we had a little bit, where I work, found a little bit of money to do the initial IT stuff. But then since then, it's been running on goodwill. So, but it's going very, very well. People are very kind with their time. So, once we had the final survey, we then sent it out for translation. It's in about 20 languages at the moment. Now, everybody who translated it, and thank you to the people who translated it here, all volunteers. Everybody volunteers. So, and again, really interesting, mums, academics, activists, practitioners, and obviously people who are all those things. it was great. So we did that, it was translated, so we could then put it out. It had to be checked, uploaded. Now, there are some languages we struggled to find, and that's been something that's bothered me, and we're going to work on for the next iteration. So, for example, a lot of migrant women languages we struggle to get, which obviously is really crucial. You know, we need Urdu, we need Arabic, we need all those languages, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on for the next iteration. We need Somali. And during the translation, some of the interesting thing was, obviously there's interesting differences in words, linguistic issues come up with translations, but more interesting were the birth cultural differences. And there were some lovely examples that really kind of helped us think about things again. So in a slightly, I have to say, slightly UK-centric way, we'd put these, where did you have your baby? So at home, in a hospital, in a midwife-led birth centre, and in a alongside birth centre. And our colleagues just went, what are you talking about? So it was like, those aren't options for us. So we ruminated on it a bit, but we thought, actually, we're going to leave them in, because this is also about expectations. So yeah, in your country, you maybe don't have a midwife-led unit, but if we put that that's an option there, maybe you kind of think, okay. So we actually consciously decided to leave that in, even though in some countries they weren't, it's not an option for you at the moment. So it was that way of, oh, okay, some expectations, just some questioning going. And that's worked. I mean, it's been tricky in the translation-y bits, but it was a conscious choice in the end. Then dissemination, again, has been done by the network, COST network, but also the networks from that. And again, some of the activist networks have been fantastic. But very different experiences. So some of the surveys just went, you know, huge, off the scale. We were like, whoa, because people have some people have absolutely amazing networks. And sometimes it was individuals who have networks, otherwise it was networks with networks. So it's been a very different experience in all the different countries. So that's something I think that's been quite interesting. The management of the survey is now, we have a steering committee and national coordinators. So it's tricky because it's all unpaid, and there's obviously loads of ethical issues. There's a lot of issues around managing it. But, you know, we're managing, just. There's this an example, just very briefly, of the kind of data. This is what the data looks like when we get it up. Now, you'll notice the surveys are in language rather than country. So, for example, this is actually the country results for Brazil, because people answered in Portuguese, but they're actually in Brazil. So it's quite an interesting mix. So we're like going, okay, Brazil, okay, that's interesting. So we have some amazing, we have like one person from Kazakhstan who's answered it, you know, people from the UAE, or, so that's interesting. But this is just an example of the kind of data. More interesting is, this is just some examples of how we use the free text, or what we can do with. So this is some examples of the free text. These are very small ones, but some are long. So basically people can add bits to what they're saying. So they can say, I had problems, and they can explain it. They can say, my birth was brilliant, and they can explain it. So it just varies. This is just a little snapshot. And then the other thing that we're trying to do is use this kind of Wordle, which again is a bit IT crazy for me, but it's showing what words are coming up most, just to try and get little snapshots of the data before we have time to really kind of clear our way through it. So this is the kind of thing, and this is the kind of thing, obviously, that we're hoping to be able to put out for you guys to be able to use. Again, this is just an example of, now this is a very early snapshot. The survey had only been going a few months, but we wanted to show what we could do. So this, for example, is comparing where women gave birth. So England, UK, so English gets a bit complicated, but that's the UK, which is even really complicated because that's England, Scotland, but UK, Greek and Bulgarian. So this is just a little snapshot of showing how this can, I think, be very useful for you, in that it's a very visual, simple thing to just get out there. The interesting thing was, I was talking to someone about this, if you look at the UK one, it's really, really skewed. This is just the first few months. 29% of women do not give birth at home in the UK. So this was a nice little reminder of data and the issues. So this is clearly, because this was only the first few months of the survey, our mates filled this in. You know, our friends and people who are active in the home birth movement filled it in. Now, I think when we look at the results now, it'll have settled down. But I put this up, that's interesting, 29% home birth rate. We can only dream. But it does show that, you know, this I think is going to be a very helpful tool. This is a recent one. So this again, just showing, so this is UK and Croatia, I think, is that right? I think I chose the Croatian one, I hope I did. Looking at which group of staff provided care. So we ask, was it doctors, midwives, nurses, a mixture of two, and other. Now, other can be people who free birth, people who, the paramedic delivered the baby. So, but again, it's kind of, it's a very visual way of looking at the difference. So in the UK, it's 60%. Midwives, Croatia, it's more like 30%. So this is the kind of thing we're hoping to offer you. So finally, hopefully I'm keeping. I think we're hoping, obviously, that our reason for doing the BBB survey is not just to do a piece of academic research. Obviously, it is to use this to provide or work with it as a tool to promote optimal childbirth, to promote change in childbirth practices, to learn from the best, to still find those examples of really, really good practice where women are having fantastic birth experiences, and to be able to say these models work. Look, this is a brilliant example. To then go to that place, do more research in why that works and why it works in that context, and can that be exported? So to learn from that. But I think, and also to provide, you know, a cross-cultural analysis, because we do have this breadth of countries, and we do tend to get, or I think we get stuck in our little silos in our little countries. And if we can look EU, European-wide and beyond, I think that really is going to be helpful. And it seems to provide quite an effective tool for that, and to support change where we can. The dissemination is interesting. There's been debates going on about this. We're very keen that this work is out there, and not out there in a strictly academic out there way. Oh, it's in lovely published papers. I have loads of first authored papers. That's brilliant. There's been a lot of talk about the ethics of these are women's experiences and voices. It's their stuff. It's not ours. We've collated it, but it's not mine. I haven't had a baby in the last 5 years. It's ages since I had one. So it's about how we give that back, how we disseminate it. So we've been thinking about, there will be academic papers, but also it's about getting it back out there. So who owns the information? Who owns the data once we process it? So we're very keen to make sure that is really carefully balanced, so that our national coordinators who've done all this work for us have it, have the data. They can then use it as works for them, whether it's lobbying their governments, using their authorities, raising women's awareness. So there's a balance that we're constantly working about with dissemination. We're obviously keen to continue to engage with women. We're wanting to set up a Facebook, a forum, so women who've been involved in the survey can interact. So we really try and support that, although, you know, the networks who've been involved are already amazing. They're engaging, you know, hugely with women. But it does help us as academics to ensure that there's that engagement with women, and that we're not cut off from activists, that there is a kind of praxis going on. Again, building on the networks, you know, the Cost Action is a very effective network, but it is, at the moment, the new Cost Action is slightly different, but the older Cost Action is essentially academics and midwives in practice, and it's to keep it wider, and this is a way to keep it wider. The BBB has involved us more with activists and more networks. Speed up. And it's to carry on that. Further research and engagement, obviously we're going to get back to the women who said they were going to be contacted, which is brilliant, so do more work with them. And the survey will close for a short period while we gather all the stuff together, and then be relaunched, new, more exciting, even better, just tweaked, but going beyond Europe, because we have South African colleagues who are really keen to be involved. So yeah, just moving that forward. Okay, that's it. I'm done. On time. go.
Do you want to answer?
Oh yes, are there any? Yeah, that's fine. Are there any questions or issues or? Yeah.
If you have time, I should like to know, since it's voluntary, have you noticed so far in the answers that you have been getting?
Sorry, since it's voluntary participants,
Yeah.
have you noticed if there's an overweight of people with negative experiences? Because I'm wondering if people who have something at heart, are they equally interested in passing on their positive experiences as they are in if they have qualms about their birth?
So far, there's a good mixture. Yeah, there's a very good mixture, and there's a good mixture of people who, if we've said, because one of the questions is, did you have problems in your pregnancy? Asking people basically to define problems as they felt, and so majority of people saying no problems, but we're getting a good mix of negative and positive. But until we do the real deep analysis, it'll be harder to tell. But at the moment, it seems pretty good.
The reason I'm asking is obviously it's what we have, and we have to deal with what we have. But her home birthers and the results from home birth have often, prior to these new bigger results, they have often been criticized that it's a special type of women. They have a certain psychological makeup, and so I was just anticipating criticism that these are just complainers because they have a fragile psychological makeup to begin with, or.
I mean, I'm hoping that the breadth is going to counsel that. We've got 30,000, so the more we get, hopefully. Okay.
Our second presenter is Dr. Imre Sebik, who is a specialist of bioethics at the University of Semmelweis University of Budapest. And he's going to continue to speak about the mother-centered care that Nick Rubashkin was already presenting about yesterday. Imre is going to focus on informed consent. As far as I know.
Yeah, thanks very much. I just have a technical problem getting this on screen. Yeah, you know what? How it comes to the. Yeah, I have to. No, it doesn't come up. Sorry. Diaproje. Yeah, it's here, but it's not on screen. Hova ide?
Nem itt fölötte ez a vetítője.
Oops, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Since I'm new, I just like to introduce myself just briefly how I got in connection with birth issues. When I was a medical student, it was back in the 80s, we had an obstetric practice. And one of my first impressions was that we talked about episiotomy. The teachers said us about the advantages, I guess only about the advantages of episiotomy. And he also mentioned that whenever they have a delicate patient, delicate means the person who paid enough, so who paid informally for the obstetric care, we could say a VIP patient, whenever they do the stitches after episiotomy, they make the stitches a little bit tighter, so to have a tighter vagina and to enhance the sexual pleasure of the future partner, of the women. And at that time, I guess it's something unusual, probably you haven't heard about. It was certainly also a little bit shocking for me. I didn't understand how it may happen. Do we have justice issues related to that? Is it really fair? Is it, or can we say that sexual pleasure is really such a mechanical issue? But at the time, I felt that I couldn't vocalize what the problem was. I just felt it's somehow unfair. And then later on, I really realized that problems around childbirth are enormous, and we have to think about those problems. So therefore, I was happy when Nicholas Rubashkin approached us, and we were able to have some. I had a lot of discussion with key opinion leaders in obstetrics regarding home births. And all of them actually mentioned that, well, we have less than 1% home births, and they also felt that home births was sort of a critique towards the established medical care in hospitals. But the majority, so 99% of women are actually satisfied because they don't want home births. And this argument was quite prevalent in the discussion, and therefore I was happy to have some data. We have, of course, knew that those 99% of women are actually not necessarily satisfied with the care they got during pregnancy. However, we didn't have hard evidence to show that, okay, what are the problems, and how can we deal with those problems. So therefore I was happy to work with Nick when we got the survey. I don't want to talk about the survey too much because Nick already mentioned a lot. So we actually were able to ask 1,200 women about their preferences, about their choices, about their satisfaction, and about their willingness to pay during pregnancy and birth and postnatal care. I think that's somewhat, this here we are, and then we were actually able to get 1,200 questions. We had 1,200 answers. We had approximately 130 plus questions regarding those issues I mentioned. And I'd like to focus now on only one issue on consent. Mari Zwart yesterday told us that ethics is underestimated in pregnancy care. Well, I couldn't agree more with that statement, I guess. Consent, I don't want to give you a lecture now on consent, is an important element in pregnancy care, and as you all know that it is one form of respecting women's autonomy. And in Central Eastern European countries, as we have heard yesterday, in Slovakia, in Czech Republic, in Slovenia, and in Belarus, and also Croatia and Bulgaria, these elements are somehow not necessary. I mean, the consent and the wishes of women are not necessarily respected as they should. We had lots of. I don't want to go with those details. The only issue I'd like to mention here is the consent. Here we ask women actually whether when they. I will talk about the induction of labor, cesarean section, and episiotomy. You have to know that the Hungarian law is actually somewhat different from the Western European and North American practice. We do have, we can have actually interventions without the consent of pregnant women. So it's explicit, the Hungarian law explicitly states that if there is if the life-threatening situation, so the life of the baby or the life of the mother is in jeopardy, then you may, so the healthcare professionals may have an intervention even without the consent of women. I think the induction of labor, well, especially the episiotomy, cannot be characterized as life-threatening or as a life-saving intervention. We know, well, actually, you know, that based on the evidence we have, episiotomy is, in the vast majority of cases, is not only useless, but it is actually harmful for women. So therefore, it cannot be characterized as a life-saving intervention. So here, the data we got regarding induction of labor. So we asked women whether they actually were asked to consent to the induction of labor, and I marked with red the no answers because I think they are the most important elements. Yes, should be the standard practice in Hungary. Well, we were not able to ask the content of informed consent, so it is actually just a simple yes or no answer. of course, we would need more thorough research to look at whether the yes answers were real informed consent answers, so whether patients were really informed about the advantages and disadvantages of episiotomy. I guess if women learns that episiotomy is actually useless based on the medical literature, but the obstetrician says, I like it, and it may be a use for me, for myself, or it's sort of a tradition. I guess we wouldn't get so many yes answers for the episiotomy, but it might be the same for labor induction. So labor induction means that altogether, 25% of women actually who got inducted labor were not asked about whether they would give permission to them. And it's also interesting that we looked at the educational level of women, and it's interesting that the majority, so there is a tendency that it's not a surprise, but it's actually the first hard evidence for us that higher educated women were less likely to have unconsented interventions, and they were more likely to be asked about consent. The data about refused, but we didn't have enough data, well, we could say fortunately, so therefore this is not really significant. The other issue was, this is not that sexy actually, but we also looked at the settlement distribution of those women who were getting unconsented labor induction, and we had a tendency that in the capital the situation was somewhat better, so only 15% of women actually who were born in a capital, in Budapest, were having unconsented labor induction, and if they lived in outside of capital, they were more likely to have unconsented labor induction. And now the issue of episiotomy is somewhat more thrilling, I guess. Even my colleagues who work in bioethics were shocked by this data. So this is actually the importance of these data, that we have almost 60% of women who got episiotomy actually were not asked whether we would like to have episiotomy or not. And again, we see a distribution that the higher you are educated, or women were educated, the less chances were for having unconsented episiotomy. But still, this number is actually very interesting, and given the argument I mentioned you that episiotomy cannot be considered as a life-threatening situation or a life-saving intervention, so even based on the Hungarian law, which has some shortcoming, as I mentioned, but still based on the Hungarian law, this is a serious violation of women's rights during childbirth. We also have a settlement distribution research. So, and again, we have the same interesting findings that the women in the capital were less likely to have unconsented episiotomy. But I think that's it. And the position. Do you have 2 more minutes? Yeah. We also asked about the position during labor, that was whether it was freely chosen by women, and then it's no surprise that actually those women who had home births had 0% of restrictions. So that means the home birth midwives actually were quite liberal in that sense, so they allowed women to choose whatever position they would like to have. All the others data are actually not that significant. It's just interesting that there are many women still who were not able to choose a position. Again, this cannot be considered again as a life-saving interventions to force women to have in a spinal position. And yeah, the cesarean section, this is a more invasive intervention, as you know, so we didn't have as much as high unconsented interventions. This is no surprise, so this shows that there is some sensitivity among obstetricians toward informed consent. Again, we didn't ask about the content of informed consent, just whether it was formally fulfilled. And again, for unconsented C-section, we have found that the education level did influence the distribution. So the probability of unconsented C-section, and again, being in a capital had decreased the likelihood of unconsented C-section. So I think we don't exactly know so how is it possible, how is it actually how it became acceptable to have unconsented interventions, unconsented invasive interventions. So I guess we have theories, but so how it became normalized in medical care to have an invasive, to make a cut in one of the most sensitive areas of women. But the importance of these data is actually that we have these data, we can actually publish this data, we can sensitize experts, even obstetricians, that this is something that we have to change and we have to think about. And thirdly, we have to think about how we could change. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, would any of you have questions?
Janka Debreceneva, Citizen Democracy and Accountability, Slovakia. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I see our data are kind of matching together. It would make a very good whole. I noticed in one of your slides on the freedom to choose the position, the percentages where, if you could just come back to the slide, that might be quite useful for the others who weren't focusing on this. The question was split as to whether the birth was taking place with the midwife alone, with the doctor alone, with the midwife and the doctor together, and at home. And what I noticed, and what I think was extremely interesting, and may be indicative of the way we should look at much more thoroughly, is that when there was the presence of both the doctor and the midwife, the percentages were kind of adding together. In the sense, no, they did not ask for my permission. And I think this might be indicative of the dynamics of the whole setting and of the gender relations that surround the obstetric care, which I think is the key to resolving, because I think we really have not had the opportunity, because there are so many issues and we are dealing with the main violations, but I think this is one of the gender aspects that's present in birth, and we should focus on this much more. And I'm really curious to hear whether you have been dealing with the issue or what other. I know there is no time for this, but I just want to highlight this because I think it's extremely interesting.
Yeah, just go ahead.
I have some thoughts, and then you fill in too if any of the Hungarians jump in. But so we're struggling with this particular category about the obstetrician and midwife working together in the hospital, whether we can actually identify what would be a midwifery style of care as it happens in the hospital. So that kind of refers a little bit to the dynamic you're talking about. I've also heard, and I'm not sure if we can identify this in our study, that the informal payments in a situation where the obstetrician is working with a midwife, that the cash often goes to the obstetrician and that very little of it gets to the midwife. So there's a gender power dynamic there also. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's basically that we certainly made want to make a distinction between midwifery model type of care and biomedical or type of care. However, as it may be the situation also in Slovakia, I guess that midwives cannot be considered as independent actors in a Hungarian setting, so they are as a nurse filling the role of nurses during birth. So therefore, therefore midwives actually do not have their autonomy or do not have their possibility to make autonomous choices, and therefore even in these kind of decisions they do not have a necessary voice. Well, there are some cases, some hospitals where midwives can work alone, more or less, but even among those midwives, there are a lot who actually follow the biomedical model, so they actually serve as a extended hand of the obstetricians.
We have one more question here from Mary.
I was astonished about 1% of against their will induction. What's your rate of induction in Hungary?
Yeah, the induction rate was, we had, where we really have the, sorry, it was altogether 22% ratio, and then against the will, we had, fortunately, these numbers were quite low, so actually, statistically, it's not significant. We had only one case here, so okay. This is actually not what we can scientifically approach.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Our third presenter is Dr. Marcia Lazzarini, the director of the WHO Collaborating Center for Maternal and Child Health in Trieste.
Okay, while we're putting on the presentation, I just want to say that I'm so happy to be here because I'm getting a knowledge of different points of view, and I hope that during my presentation I will also present a different perspective of working on quality of care. And I was thinking yesterday how important it would be to put together all this perspective, so the user's view, the women, but also the fathers should be there, and then the providers, so the health staff, and also to combine this with a health system perspective, which I think is very important. So, here? Yeah. Then second one. And I think there, I'm learning Croatian here. The software is in Croatian. Fine. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about this tool, which is called Quality Assessment and Improving Tool. It's one of the WHO tool on quality improvement, and that's specific for mothers and newborn babies. So the outline of my presentation is briefly telling you about the scope, the features and the guiding principles of the tools, the methods of the update that we did last year, some of the concepts of the tool with emphasis on one specific chapter, which is the chapters on rights of women and newborns at the hospital level, and then some of the experience that we had using the tools. So these are two of the tools relevant to women care. One is specific on hospital care, and the other one is specific to antenatal care, so let's say outpatient care. And characteristics of these tools are that they are based on standards, so they're based on evidence, on WHO guidelines and guidelines from scientific societies. They are systematic, so they aim at doing a systematic assessment of the quality of care by going through a series of more than 300 items. So the new tool for hospital level is about 180 pages. And it's more than 300 items and 13 different chapters. I will tell you more in a few slides. They are participatory, so they are done together with a team of local professionals, but they also include the user's view. And they are action-oriented, so they aim at identifying strength and weakness, but work on the strengths to improve this weakness. And so the final step of the quality assessment is to come out with an action plan which includes some action to be implemented. Then there is usually a follow-up, a second assessment, and the overall aim is to improving quality of care in the timelines of 1 or 2 years. So I think I already said that it's based on standard, it's participatory, and in this sense I want to stress that the assessment is performed in agreement and collaboration with the Ministry of Health usually, but also in agreement and collaboration with the health managers and staff at facility level. It has a proper autonomy, a proper life, this software, okay? So it's action-oriented, and it's suitable for use at facility level, but also for countrywide assessments. So to give a picture of the countrywide situation, and then for developing a national plan of action to improve situation at national level. So there are some guiding principles, and I want to underline some of them. Principle number 5 is that quality of care includes holistic and culturally appropriate care and respect of all service users' rights. And that is reflected in the different chapters, and in a specific chapter on looking at rights of users. Principle number 6, I already mentioned, a participatory approach, but even more important, number 7, avoiding a blaming or punitive attitude. Number 8, assessment should be combined with some definition of specific action for quality improvement. So it's a constructive approach. It's not just, doing an analysis or judging somebody. It's working together, developing a plan of action, and let's see what we can do together. Number 9, the assessment is an occasion to build local commitment and to develop capacities. So during the assessment, there is a national team, and this team is brought together in a peer-to-peer model with international assessor, international guidelines are discussed, quality coordinator are identified, and all this is under the framework of building local capacity for quality improvement. And health system factors are considered. Health system factors include local laws, availability of training, availability also of number of staff. So all factors like facilitators and barriers that somehow contribute to the final quality of care. And that's done, again, not in a punitive way, but in a constructive way. So these are the sections of the tool. There are 4 main sections. First one is looking at hospital support service, and so that's looking at the physical structures, at the staffing, at the basic services, at the statistics service, and we already heard from different presenters how the statistics sometimes are a weak point because they are not reflecting the real situation. Pharmacy management, equipment and supply, lab service, and the ward infrastructure. Ward infrastructures also have to do with rights of patients. So is the environment user-friendly? How are rooms organized, toilets, washing facilities, and so on. Section number 2 include about 50% of the whole content of the tool, and it's all focusing on case management. And once again, I want to stress it's based on international recommendation. So all aspects of care are assessed in terms of the more recent scientific evidences. Section number 3 focuses on policies and organization of services. So that's more on a health system perspective. And it's looking at what are the systems for infection prevention, for example, which is a cross-cutting issue. What are the systems for implementing guidelines, for promoting training, for audit systems? What's the level of access to hospital care and continuity of care? And then we have a chapter specific on mother and newborn rights. The assessment is done by a mixed team of international and national health professionals. Usually it's in between 10 to 15 people with multidisciplinary, so you will have obstetric and gyn, midwife, nurses, psychologists. Source of information are from different sites, and interview of users are of course there. So some of the data similar to those presented in these surveys will be there, but also a lot of papers is evaluated. So medical charts, protocols, reports from mortality audit, for near-miss audits. So all these documents are evaluated to get a final assessment, which is a triangulation of different sources of information. So as I said before, 12 different chapters plus the interviews, more than 300 items. All of these need to be done. So the idea is to be systematic, comprehensive, to cover all domains of quality of care, and to use the same system in each facility so that the result somehow can be also compared. So what are the outputs of the tool? What's going to come out of the assessment? So first of all, there is a systematic evaluation. So there are direct feedback to local staff in a capacity building manner. And then, as I mentioned before, an action plan is developed at facility level. And then for countrywide assessment, when you do, for example, 10 hospitals randomly selected in a country, then you can come out with some idea of what's the national situation, what are the strengths and weaknesses, what are the priority and the action needed. So a national plan is also developed. And that's, again, participatory and with identification of priorities for action, but also what are the feasible solutions. So these are some of the metrics which are used. This is a simple metric used at facility level. So after the assessment, the team will ask to the local staff to identify together what are the priority problems, what are the action needed, and who is the responsible person and the timeline. And on the second assessment, this is what you're going to check. So what are the progress on the action plan? At the national level, all information are put together, and national action are developed under, let's say, the different building blocks of the health system structure. This is the health system building blocks of WHO, of your regional office for Europe, so stewardship, resource generation, service delivery, and financing. Typical example of this is there is lack of training on counseling among staff. So who has to deliver the training? Who has to organize this? This is an action that needs to be developed at national level, most usually. Or there is a lack of national guidelines, or national guidelines are not in line with international evidence, with scientific evidence. So we need to update national guidelines. And these need to be done at national level, cannot be done at facility level. Briefly, this is the history of the tool. First edition came out in year 2009. It was used in many countries in the WHO European region, which include many countries actually in the Asian continent, like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and so on. But the tool was also used in other regions, like in the Gaza Strip, in Africa, and Southeast Asia. Then in 2014, we did the update, the technical update of the tool, putting in all the new evidence. WHO produced in the last 5 years so many new guidelines, and also scientific society developed important guidelines. So all this evidence was brought in the tool, so this constitute the standards based on what you evaluate clinical care. And also the new edition, 2014 edition, includes a much more structured chapter on patient rights, which I'm going to tell you more now. The main reference on the chapters on patient rights, so the white ribbon, the International Mother and Baby Childbirth Initiative chart, the IPPF charter, the charter on the European Charter on Patient Rights, and the European Association of Children in Hospital charts, UN declarations, and also the global WHO strategy for sexual and reproductive health. This is a full list of references that we use to develop the chapter on patient rights, and that's available online, so you can easily access it. And that's the structure of the chapter, which overall include 62 different key items under different domains. We use the UN declaration to structure the domains. So looking at different things like availability, accessibility, acceptability, and respect. Pain avoidance is there, privacy, unnecessary procedure, which is a very important topic, especially in the in some European countries. So use of ineffective and possibly unsafe procedures. Methods of development, just quickly, there was a core group, then a larger group of external referees, then the tool was field tested, and then it was finalized and finally published. And now it's going to be used also in the Afro region and in the Sierra region with some local adaptation. This is to acknowledge that this is a work of a multidisciplinary group of people with different backgrounds, and also to acknowledge participation of different referees. Quickly, experience with the use of the tool. This is just to give an example of the final summary score. So each chapter, through different items that are collected, will come out with that summary score. So these are the chapters, and these are the summary score for, from one country, which is anonymously represented here. Scoring system is also reported on the slide. So score of 3 is ideal care, score of 2 is suboptimal care, score of 1 is suboptimal care with significant health hazard, and score of 0 is totally inadequate care. So you can see from this example how scores were not really fair, and that's not just, you know, outliner, but it's a situation which was found in several different countries. And in red, you see the scores for rights of the mother and baby. So it's a very low scoring. So what were the main findings on quality assessment done in different countries, for example, in the ex-Soviet area? So case management, not complying with guidelines, insufficient continuity of care, quality particularly poor in the dimension of information, communication, confidentiality, and holistic care. Insufficient integration between different systems, often without coordination between hospital and primary health care. They don't work together. Frequent out-of-pocket payments, and sometimes deficient infrastructures, like lack of running water or hot water or facility for personal hygiene. Of course, this was combined also with some good examples and some champion examples of good quality of care. And quality of care in general was heterogeneous among different facilities. I'm finishing. So these are just some of the interviews with the mothers. So these are some quotations and kind of complaints in regards of lack of information or lack of appropriate living conditions. I think they are quite similar to what we have heard from different surveys, actually. But maybe they cover also different areas, like the living conditions, informal payments, we have heard from Nicholas yesterday. So interviews are also covering this aspect, like privacy. Information and counseling, we have heard this from also different speakers. And that's just a snapshot of experience from different countries and publications. That's the tool applied in Albania. That's 3 countries, Albania, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan. That's a before and after evaluation in Uzbekistan. In green, you see the after, and that was just 12 months project. So that's also inspiring because the quality of care can actually be improved. That's Gaza Strip. That's Uganda. And so I'm getting to my conclusion. So there is a tool there which can help and assist hospital and health authorities in improving quality of care for mothers and newborns, and implementing all principles of respectful care for women and infants at facility level. And that's all. And the link of the tool is there. So if you want to go through the tool, that's freely available, you can download. But most often this is done, as a country-wide assessment together with the Ministry of Health. So it's a process that needs to be planned and organized. Thank you very much.
If I may ask one question myself, in your description of the groups that are involved, the team that is assembled, I didn't hear the mention of consumer groups. Are they involved in that process, except for the mothers' interviews? How are they involved otherwise?
Can I have a second question, and then will speed it up?
My question was just the point you ended on is that, this happens, these processes begin in collaboration with national ministries of health. So how do those doors get opened to set so that there can be a national kind of top-down stress on a culture of safety?
So thanks for this question. Maybe just answer this first. So that's actually a point that I was reflecting on yesterday. So users' view is there because it's collected through the interviews, but we don't have a consumer in the assessment team. But there is a psychologist collecting, and psychologist or sociologist collecting the user's views. So their views are reflected in the assessment. We may think about including a consumer in the assessment team. I want also to stress that assessment is very technical. So we look at the medical charts, we look at the WHO guidelines. That's why I'm happy to be here, because I'm hearing from different point of view. So that's a good, I think, idea for the future. And in general, maybe to work more in collaboration with these groups. That is what I was thinking yesterday. And in regards to your question, these are usually WHO projects. So they are, let's say, done through the WHO country offices and through connection with the Ministry of Health. And this is how it works. So that's how the project is developed, through country office and official planning with the Ministry of Health and so on.
I think we have, oh, you want to answer? Of course.
No, thank you for the consumers group, but usually you are in a maternity and you need to build trust from the staff. Consumers group are not very frequent in the countries that you see listed in which we worked. I have experience of the other kind of assessment in Africa where you are called by an NGO And this example, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and other countries, it's one hospital assessment in which you build through the NGO that calls you. And assessments were done not only by WHO, but UNICEF, USAID, and other, usually it's partners. But as Marcia pointed out, when WHO calls you, is because Ministry of Health says WHO come, okay, this is the Uganda thing. And this is the hospital team under this Italian NGO who calls you, then you have an open door to go there. But it's kind of different, the only hospital assessment than the countrywide. Sorry, just to clarify.
Okay, no, thank you. We have one more question here, and then we can take two.
Well, I noticed that Croatia was not on the list of the countries included, so I was just curious, why is that? How do you decide who is included or not? And you mentioned that, if I understood, the goal is some kind of action plan. Is that on a national level, or do you use then one for the whole countries that recommend everything to all? How does that go?
So we have one more question here.
My question is whether you do any rights education as part of the assessment process, because one of the biggest problems we see with these types of rights violations is ignorance, and that people don't even, it's just normalized, people don't even recognize it as a rights violation, staff and parents.
So just quickly, because I know we are running out of time, answer to the second question is yes, definitely yes. First question, I will, because I've seen Alberta standing up, so Alberta, do you want to ask the first question? Yeah.
When you run through WHO, if Croatia does not put with WHO as priority mother and child care, there is no intervention in mother and child care for the next 2 years. So you are going to country, WHO, World Health Organization, established an agreement with the countries every 2 years. And countries say, my priority is HIV, or my priority is non-communicable disease, or my priority is mother and child health. In those cases, those countries, when in the 10 years I was working in WHO, we were going there and proposing, you want to work on effective prenatal care, you want to do assessment, and you agree. And also there are priority countries which are chosen by serious problem, high maternal mortality. So of course we work more in Central Asian republics or based on projects, for example, Albania. That's why Croatia is not there. But you know, government decides.
So if you lobby for them to ask, we are happy to do the assessment.
Our next presentation is coming with Dr. Milan Stanojevic, a neonatologist, president-elect of the World Association of Prenatal Medicine, and he's discussing the Mother-Friendly Hospital Initiative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, let me see. There is no mouse here.
There is on the screen.
Oh, there is here, okay. But still, I don't know how to get, okay. 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 Hello, everybody. Well, I'm here, in fact, as a representative of UNICEF, but I'm also a clinician and neonatologist. And what I would like to share with you is our experience in baby-friendly hospital initiative implementation in Croatia for already 22 years. And we were, in fact, very successful in implementing baby-friendly hospital initiative. And out of 32 maternity wards, there are 31 who are baby-friendly, which are baby-friendly. So this is something which is really a good fact, and it is something which is in fact, very important for the care of our newborn babies. And in my hospital, we are questioning women how satisfied are they with the implementation of a baby-friendly hospital initiative, and 80% of them are very satisfied. But during those 22 years, we didn't have any maternity ward which would like to apply for the assessment of mother-friendly hospital initiative. And then I was really shocked when in our daily newspaper we saw the headline with that question: are Croatian maternity hospitals indeed a place of horror? I didn't realize that we are, seen in that way by our patients, because, I was not. I'm a neonatologist, and I was not involved in very much in that part of care. So you can see here that the lady wrote that during the birth I was insulted, and they yelled at me and threatened me with incorrect information. Then we have RODA. RODA is a very important NGO, but our Ministry of Health and our healthcare professionals, they are not very eager to cooperate with, with RODA and NGOs, and they don't consider them as partners, and therefore it is not easy to work, with NGOs and to change things. UNICEF is trying to connect those two groups of partners who are caring for women giving birth or childbearing women. So RODA was very important in this issue as well, because RODA also launched Break the Silence in Croatia, and RODA intended to encourage mothers to share their negative experience during labor. Positive experiences were not shared, and there were not many newspaper headlines on positive experience on childbirth, and I would say it is. It was also shocking for me, and I didn't know why this is so. And in fact, I don't know how many women in Croatia do have negative experiences concerning the childbirth, but just one having that kind of negative experience is too much. And I'm very happy that I learned that we in Croatia are not, alone, and this is not, just this is not specific Croatian situation. So I've learned that in Slovakia, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and everywhere else in Eastern Europe, they are facing the same problems. So I hope we together can make some difference, and therefore I'm really very happy that RODA organized this conference, and I'm very unhappy that there is no one from our professional societies of gynecologists who are present here and who can listen to problems of NGOs and so on. So, this is our situation in Croatia. I don't know who I am representing, NGOs or medical professionals, but I am with you, in fact. So, I'm not going through this because it is, I would say, boring. But I just wanted to say how many, declarations and how how are they called? I don't even know. You know, we have in order to preserve women's rights and human rights. So there are many of them. That means that human rights and women's rights are not well preserved at all in the world, not only in Eastern Europe. So, well, yes, this is also not very important, but what is important is that we have international organizations which recognized that women's rights, preserving women's rights is a very important issue. Why? Because, you know, when we launched Baby-Friendly Hospital Initiative, then professionals were together with us. We all together implemented that initiative. And while we are trying to implement Mother-Friendly Hospital Initiative, then professionals who are involved in implementing, or who should be involved in implementing that initiative, they are just a part. They don't stand together with us. So FIGO statement I found very important, because FIGO is very important and strong international organization, and which in terms of maternal care, WHO was not, because while I was talking with my gynecologist, they told me, well, you know, those people from WHO, they are administrative people. I don't believe them. They were not working in the field. You know, in the maternity ward or in delivery room. So I don't believe we can do that. So therefore the statement of FIGO for us is very important. So FIGO, together with all these organizations, and merging together with WHO and so on. So it's really something which is important. So I'm going just through those FIGO criteria and tell you what is the situation in Croatia. I don't know whether you would like to hear it or not. I don't know whether Roda told you the results no. So I'm going just adopt preferred position for women in labor and provide food and beverages. No way. So no food, no beverages, and always on your back. Okay. And very few examples. You can count them on hand fingers or something like that, you know, in which the situation is a little bit different. Non-discriminatory policy of HIV, okay. And services ethnic minorities, well, you know, we have ethnic minorities, but I mean, they are part of our society, and we don't have, as Slovakia, as I remember, we don't have issue of youth pregnancies. You know, it's not issue in Croatia at all. So concerning privacy in labor and delivery, you can see. This is my department. This is privacy. Okay, so I don't have to say anything more. This is privacy. Okay, so concerning the choice of birthing partner, well, there is no choice. I mean, if you want to have your partner, then probably you can have him or her, doula, maybe, yes, and sometimes if the partner was not going with the women to prenatal classes, then he was not, you know, permitted to come to be together with the woman during her childbirth. Culturally competent care, we don't have that issue because, you know, we don't have many different people in Croatia. No physical, verbal, emotional, or financial abuse. physical, and you saw that some of women experience that. Concerning the financial abuse, that is not the issue in Croatia, because everybody has a free of charge, health care, and we can get it. It is affordable. Affordable or free maternity care, it is good in Croatia. It is affordable and free. No routine practice, no way. Everything is routine. Non-pharmacological and pharmacological pain relief. Non-pharmacological, there is no at all. I mean, in some hospital you have maybe acupuncture or something like that, but they don't believe in non-pharmacological methods at all. And psychology is not that much important at all. Yes. And skin-to-skin mother-baby care and breastfeeding, well, this is rather good. We are satisfied with that, although it is not ideal. So, concerning this intervention, they are just opposite. Induction rate, it's almost 90%, 70%, let's say. As episiotomy rate, it's around 50%. In my hospital, it is very low, around 20 to 25%. So, yes, total cesarean rate at the national level in Croatia, it is 20%. 20. In my hospital, 20 as well, which is, if you compare it to Italy, to Greece, or to, let's say, Brazil, yeah, it's rather low, acceptable. Vaginal after cesarean, it is, of course, 90% cesarean sections, yes, after, yeah, so not vaginal. So, I just wanted to share with you some of my experience concerning women's right to vote. This is from 18th century, you can see Sweden and so on, and in 19th century you can see, in which countries women had the right to vote, and this is 20th century. You see some of the countries listed here. You see, in 1990 it was Switzerland. Switzerland, and in 21st century. So you see that not many women that they have right to vote, which means that issue of equality is still on the table in the world, concerning the difference between women and men, and this is something which should be changed. Of course, in the whole world. This is not cultural issue, as maybe you can see from these countries here. This is issue of preserving our mankind. I mean, to be equal. Yes, this is very, very much important. And I was shocked while I was reading these rights of women. You can see that not to be physically mutilated, to not be killed in the name of honor. So these are still, this is 21st century. This is not the 18th century or 17th century. This is 21st century. These are rights of women. You see? Awful. Shocking. So I'm just going to skip this because I'm talking too long already. So what we intend in Croatia to do, we would like to merge those two initiatives in one. I'm just going briefly to tell you something about the difference between those two initiatives from the Croatian point of view. So here, Baby-Friendly Hospital Initiative was launched by WHO and UNICEF together with medical professionals. It was widely supported by respected professional associations, which was very important for our professionals. it was poorly implemented in the part related to the code implementation, and it still is. Mothers sometimes refuse to room in with their newborn babies because they are too exhausted. A particular problem is the increase of C-section rate, I mean C-section epidemic. And concerning the mother-friendly hospital initiative, it was launched by WHO and by non-governmental organizations. Professionals were reserved towards the initiative, and until recently, there was no support of well-known professional associations. And therefore, I'm very grateful to FIGO. Principles of care are not included in standard professional training programs. The disproportion between user expectations and the willingness and ability of the healthcare system to meet these expectations. In fact, they don't know how to fulfill these expectations because they are not educated to fulfill them. It is not easy to change the relation toward the patients who used to be an object of care and becoming a subject of care. And patients are still in our minds as healthcare professionals, objects of care, not subjects of care. And now what I'm going to tell, you know, after these letters, our Ministry of Health, after these headlines in newspaper, our Ministry of Health began inspection in all maternity wards. And this inspection was done because they wanted, in fact, to implement mother-friendly hospital initiative in the future. So, in one of our maternity wards, there was a committee for implementation mother-friendly hospital initiative. And what happened? Nothing. So, if you want the problem not to be solved, then organize committee. Yeah, but I believe that we will succeed. I believe, because probably we have UNICEF, we have you, we have FIGO now, and we have WHO, yes, and you know, and therefore I think together with UNICEF in Croatia, who has a good you know, yeah, I mean, it's UNICEF is important in Croatia because of that baby-friendly hospital initiative. And we can put them together. I mean, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Social Affairs, and all the ministries in order to make babies and mothers more, you know, to make the satisfaction of mothers and babies better in maternity wards. And why is it important? It is important because Croatia is dying. We have demography tragedy. You can see here that in that period, natural increment was negative and 13,000 were missing. And in this period here, 92,000 were missing. Natural increment rate was negative, which means that almost 8.5 times more people, you know, died in this period than in this period here. So this is a demographic tragedy. And at the middle of this 21st century, there will be 1 million people in Croatia less than now. So what we have to do, we have to make our maternity hospitals mother and baby friendly. Thank you.
Thank you. We're over. Too much. Thank you. Okay.
If I can ask you just to, I know that this is the next step for you, but some of us are still at the previous step, the baby-friendly, and we're still struggling, I know, we're still struggling with that. And I think if you can just briefly tell us how you managed to implement that in Croatia. My understanding is that this is part of a reaccreditation procedure for hospitals, so they have to do it. So if you can, it's not? Okay. If you can just briefly tell us how you did it.
No, of course not. It is not mandatory. I mean, they did it because they wanted to do that. I mean, and healthcare professionals who were involved in mother-friendly hospital initiative were pediatricians mostly. I mean, we had also gynecologists, but pediatricians. So we implemented it as a good clinical practice. We consider it as a good clinical practice, and therefore we consider it as something which is good for the mothers and for the babies. So this was the reason.
Hello, my name is Željka Jelević. I'm from Zagreb, Croatia. I'm an ethnologist and sociologist. I have to express my deep concern regarding your presentation. I've heard a lot of praise of your work, and personally I admire what you personally as a doctor do. But my concern is in the way I expected you being part of a UNICEF, that you would be more critical toward a system which precisely is very abusive to mothers in delivery rooms. It is not that we should have on such conferences this nicely humoristic way which could be a part of your bitterness, but could you please give us some firm examples what medical professionals in Croatian hospitals do towards women as human beings with human rights. We are talking about violation on human rights of women in delivery rooms. So what are the plans of UNICEF, which you represent here, to push government, to push minister, to push hospital directors and chiefs of units and divisions in hospital to start to treat women as human political beings with human rights?
Okay. Okay. If you considered my presentation as humoristic, I'm sorry. This was not intended at all. And as you know, UNICEF is working as a partner with a government. So therefore, we have agreement with the government, and we agreed on to launch mother-friendly hospital initiative in the next several months. Firstly, as a pilot program in 2 maternity hospitals, which are practicing, let's say, better medical practice than the others. It's Rijeka Maternity Hospital and Sveti Duh Medical Maternity Hospital, and then to make our own criteria for mother-friendly hospital and baby-friendly hospital initiative, and then to spread it out in the way as we did for baby-friendly hospital initiative. So, in fact, we are aware of the problem, and we are aware of the problem all the time, as you can see, and we are trying to make pressure on governmental organization using or working together with non-governmental organizations. RODA is one of the strongest, and we have also others, and UNICEF is really working hard on it to make maternity wards in Croatia a better place. In the last several years, many maternity, at least 4 maternity wards were reconstructed, which is really very important, and it was reconstructed just to make it a better place. You saw my maternity ward, and the accommodation circumstances are very important to implement that initiative. So this is what we are doing.
Unfortunately, yeah, we need to move to the next.
According to the plan, we have still 3 presentations to go, but only left for 1 enough time. So this is a question, how do we...
We can do the presentations, but no questions.
Okay. Okay. Then our next presenter is coming from Denmark. Thank you. And she's going to tell us about misoprostol use in labor induction in her country. Thank you.
I was asked to pronounce my name. I'm Jette Aarø Clausen. Yeah. How do I get this up? Can you help me, please? I don't know this one. Oh, it is? Okay, it's okay. So, I will tell you about a controversy that we had in Denmark for around approximately 10 years. I will especially tell you about the work that I and my colleague Eva Rydahl has done in Denmark. We are both 2 midwifery lecturers. It is a long and very complicated story, and I can only give you a very short little peep into these processes. But in order to do this, I also need to tell you a little about misoprostol, because otherwise you will not be able to understand it. So misoprostol is a widely used drug for induction of labor, and it is 10 years ago there were no registered misoprostol drugs on the market. So all the drugs that were used off-label. To start with, the good thing is that in 2013 we got a plan that our national health authorities made a plan for surveillance of drugs used for induction of labor. And it was the direct result of the work that we did on misoprostol. They had a few goals to support all regions to identify the right level of induction. That is because we had 27% of induction, and we still have. To promote openness and dialogue about the use of the drug, to ensure the quality of drugs, to make surveillance of the drugs that are used, and this is because there's a specific problem with off-label drugs, to monitor side effects, and to secure sufficient information. There is a huge need for this, because the use of misoprostol is, I think, one of the tests of obstetrics. You know, one obstetrician called me one day and he was extremely angry with me, and he told me, he said, "I had not expected from you, Jette, you are a researcher. How can you talk about this in public? This is a discussion that should only be kept in the scientific societies." And you know, I said to him, "Well, do you remember we had a conversation 8 years ago, and I asked you to bring it to the scientific societies. Did you do it?" It was quite silent, you know, because it is a really strange problem. It's something that we do not want to talk about, the problems with off-label drugs. And I am really, it has been a long journey. It is like going on a field trip where it has amazed me how willing the obstetrical community and midwives has been to close their eyes for this, that it is off-label and that we can't register side effects. and that we should not talk about it, and we should not listen to women's stories, because women's stories has been there. The production of an off-label drug is done like this, and this is how it started in Denmark. We had misoprostol. It is a drug for the prevention of gastric ulcers, but it comes in other... in Denmark at that time, we only had it in 200 micrograms, but we only needed about 25 micrograms to induce. We could not cut this tablet into 8 small pieces, so the obstetrical society decided, well, if we can't get it in 25 micrograms, we will take 50. And that was where they started. And they just cut it like this, that you see here. And I don't know when it exactly started in Denmark, but I know that Swedish midwife has told me that Danish obstetrician brought it to Sweden. They had it in their pocket when they went there for, you know, just one shift or something like that. And they taught them, you know, how to cut this pill. And this is not really the idea we have of safe Danish obstetric, that it should be done this way. You know, when you go into the literature, you have to be very careful, because misoprostol is used in many doses, in many different ways, and it comes in many forms. Recently, now, we have had registered drugs that are like any other drugs on the market. We also still have off-label use. That means that it is produced from Cytotec. And now, at least in my country, something very new is coming into the arena, and that is non-registered drugs. That means that these are drugs that are imported from WHO-approved production sites in India, really production sites that produce medicine for the third world. But now we are importing it into Denmark, and the company that is doing this is planning a campaign in Scandinavia to introduce this drug. And what is really important about this is that you can't find any information on any public databases on Angosta. And nobody, you can't, you know, patient information is not available. So how can you generate knowledge about serious but rare side effects? Because that is what we are afraid of. Normally, you know, when you develop a drug, there are different phases. And what is the problem here is that none of these, when you have rare side effects, the method that we have to measure are not sufficient, because you need really big groups of women to find that there are rare side effects. So this can only be done post-marketing. But then we have this problem that post-marketing surveillance is firmly tied to that medical company has the right to make post-marketing surveillance if they have a registered drug. But if the drug isn't registered, no one has the obligation. This is a picture of what is on the Danish National Health Authority's homepage, and you don't need to be able to read it. Just take the red dots as places where you kind of gather information and connect it to knowledge in other countries. And then, wait a minute, what happened here? All these places, we identified huge gaps in the security system. Let me go back. So, you will meet obstetricians that use this argument all the time. This drug has been used for more than 20 years, and there are no side effects because, you see, they say, have you ever seen reported side effects? But the problem is there were no system to report it. And actually, I do not know if Cytotec has side effects. I cannot know, but I can know that we don't have the knowledge, and that is what I want to stress. The Federal Drug Agency in the US, Pfizer, the company that produced Cytotec in the US, in Denmark, and Sweden, and probably also more countries that I don't know of, They have all warned against the use of cytodex to produce misoprostol induction tablets. And 1.5 years ago, the French health authorities banned the use of cytodex to make misoprostol tablets in France. And they all have the same concern that this drug may have a serious side effect, primarily because it induces hyperstimulation. From reading a lot of literature on this, my feeling, I can't say that I know it, but I wouldn't be surprised if in time we will find out that this drug is in fact not very effective when you use it in small doses. It is extremely effective if you use it in high doses, but the problem is that the side effect is heavily linked to dose. So that is also why the Danish obstetrician now will not use the registered drugs, because all the registered drugs comes in high doses. So in fact, you can have there can also be good reason to buy it in small doses. So this is some of the things that makes this his story very, very complicated. So what could we do, in order to put this to the table? This story, actually, what have we been doing? Our first misoprostol controversy was in 2003, and it started out by 2 midwifery students coming to my office saying, we want to do our bachelor on misoprostol. And I said, excuse me, misoprostol in Denmark? You can't use non-registered drugs here. I knew misoprostol from the US and from midwives there, and I just thought this must be a mistake, because they came with a guideline saying that the hospital was using this. So I called the health authorities and I asked them, is this legal? I talked with a lawyer there for about 45 minutes, and then at the end I said, but if you say that this is legal, we don't have any security system in Denmark. And it was very silent in the phone, and then he said, you said it. And he meant, in the way he said it was, I cannot say it, but yes, you're right. We don't have any security here. I asked the Danish Midwifery Association to contact the health authorities, and after 8 months later, the health authorities banned the use of 50 microgram misoprostol and told the hospital they were only allowed to use 25. But shortly, and they also told that we should start to register side effects in Denmark, but the problem was that I left the profession for a short time afterwards. And what this process has learned me is that there are not many people in obstetrics or midwifery who are willing to take the discussion on misoprostol, because you're going to be an outcast in your profession, because it is so controversial. So when I left, everything died. And the Midwifery Association they had a meeting with the obstetrician, and from thinking that, they told me I was the best when I had the first conversation with them. Oh, you're so clever, Jette. Ooh, it's very good. Then they had the meeting with the obstetrician, and then they were very critical. And since then, they haven't really been talking to me about misoprostol. I'm very sad to say, but that's how it is. So then in 2012, I got this call from some journalists saying that they had reports from women about serious side effects, if I would work with them. And actually I said no, because I didn't have the strength to do it once again. And then they said to me, could you please forward us to some other person? And I said, I have a colleague, Eve, try her. But the problem was that Eve's office is just opposite mine, and then she started to come to my office with all these strange stories, and they've got more and more horrific. And so there we were, and now 3 years has passed, and we are actually almost working with this on a daily basis, not getting paid. The second misoprostol controversy was kind of pointing to what we identified was that hospital pharmacies was producing these tablets off-label, and it was not secure. What has happened in this controversy is actually that all production of off-label misoprostol has stopped in Denmark. But the use has not stopped because we get it from India. Because the health minister and the health authorities would not listen to us, we actually decided to bring all our material to the health committee in the Danish parliament, and they got really upset. So they asked the health minister or the health authorities to make a report and present it to the minister. This report was a big lie. So what we did was we have written counter reports, and the whole process has gone, all the work goes into that they produce material and we produce counter material, and from that develops these changes. So one of the things that we have managed to get is now that we have a new legislation in Denmark that says that all midwives are obliged to report side effects. So it's like we are making small steps all the time. So the goal is not so much been to abolish misoprostol totally, but also just seeing this change of process and trying to evoke awareness and discussion and reflection on it. And personally, the things that I would hope the most for is international recognition of that we need a reporting system of off-label drugs, because they will probably be used more often in the future because of health costs. That's it.
Our next presenter is Jane Stojanovic, a midwife from New Zealand, who will tell us about how in her countries midwives are accountable to their peers and mothers.
Good morning. I nearly said good afternoon. It is probably good afternoon in New Zealand, so I suppose I have some excuse for that. Now, if I can just get this up here. That one. Okay, thanks. Right. I came here from New Zealand because 40 years ago, I came from New Zealand to what was then Yugoslavia, and I came with 3 children, and then I went back 3 years later to New Zealand with 4 children. The one up there, over there with the camera, was the one that was born in Zemun, which is near Belgrade. Now I've embarrassed her thoroughly. I didn't have a bad time having a baby in Serbia. It was actually a reasonable experience. But it was a reasonable experience because it was my 4th baby and it was a very easy birth. While I was I just had my baby, I heard the midwife or nurse, I'm really not sure which, telling off the woman in the next bed just through the curtain about why couldn't you do it as fast as the Angleskinja that had just had her baby, my 4th in 6 years, and this was her first. And I was pretty horrified by that. I just felt that that was just so unfair. So it sort of stuck in my mind. And when I saw this conference advertised, I decided that actually I would really like to come, because in the 40 years since I had that baby, things have changed enormously in New Zealand. When I had my babies there, it was very similar to what you have here. Hospital birth, obstetric controlled, woman routine practice. But in 1990, because we had very strong women's voices, the women and the midwives got together and they worked together and they absolutely pestered every member of parliament, because women couldn't have a home birth without a doctor there. And if a woman wanted a home birth and the doctor didn't want to go, that meant the woman couldn't have a home birth, even if she had a midwife who was willing to look after her. So, and it was illegal. It was totally legal to have a baby at home. So it just didn't work, and people got very upset. And we decided that, well, we all got together, and the midwives actually broke away from the nurses, because the nurses weren't really representing what the midwives and the women wanted. So we set up our own professional organisation, and we started to change things. So in 1989 we set up our professional organisation, the New Zealand College of Midwives. I've just put this in to show you whereabouts New Zealand is, because I remember a lot of people when I lived here didn't know. So maternity in New Zealand has been free to women since 1938. So midwives aren't allowed to charge women. We actually get paid by the government. All women are entitled to free maternity care up until 6 weeks after the baby's born. And 85% of women now choose a midwife as their primary caregiver and may never see a doctor throughout their pregnancy, labour or birth, or afterwards, unless there is an issue. So it is a very different system. It's totally different. And I must say that before 1990, I would never have believed that it could change so much. Home birth has always been legal. This is a home birth I did in 1989. And this was just before the law changed, and I did actually have a doctor supporting me. And you can see that she's waiting for the afterbirth. You can see the cord sitting there. Okay, so midwives in New Zealand are autonomous. We can prescribe, we can order tests, we can refer directly to obstetricians, paediatricians, anaesthetists, whoever we need that woman to see. And we can take our own clients into hospital, look after them, and take them back home and look after them at home, or keep them in hospital and visit them in hospital in the same way that a doctor does, or could, and still can, obviously. Midwives attend almost all births. They can be self-employed, and then they have caseloads they look after usually about 40 to 50 women a year, because you're looking after them throughout the whole birthing process, including the pregnancy, and up to 6 weeks. They can be employed in the hospitals, just in the same way that your midwives would be employed in the hospitals, working shifts. And we have our own regulatory authority, so we have a midwives' council who actually I'll talk about a bit more. And I've already mentioned our own professional organisation, and we may engage in postgraduate education. I have a PhD in midwifery. And apparently that's unusual, but over in New Zealand it's not so unusual. So what protects women in childbirth in New Zealand? Now, Milan had a very good slide with all the universal declarations of rights and things. I haven't tried to compete with that, so I was quite happy that you had that there. New Zealand law is based on there is a lot of human rights inbuilt into the law. The ministry has its own way of auditing and looking at hospitals and midwifery care, and they also do surveys of women to see their satisfaction rates very regularly, every couple of years. And consumers have a lot of representation, and I'll talk about that too. So New Zealand law, the Crimes Act, every practitioner has a duty to have and use reasonable knowledge, skill and care. And I hope my translation's reasonable. And don't worry, I haven't carried on with those. They got a bit too complex. And the Bill of Rights, everybody can refuse medical treatment. So the situation where a woman could be induced without her permission, in law, by law, cannot happen. Coercion and strong persuasion probably still does happen, much as we would hate to admit it. The Health and Disability Consumer Act, this was really important because we had an incident in New Zealand where a woman who had cervical cancer found themselves part of a rather irregular and not very good research project, and several women died as a result. So there was a real public outcry, and the idea of obstetricians and doctors in general as infallible sort of got a really severe knock in New Zealand, which probably actually helped the midwives to regain their autonomy. So the government, in response to consumer anxiety, established this consumer code, and it accepts complaints from health and disability consumers. So anyone who breaches this code has the right to complain, and you are encouraged to complain to the Health and Disability Commissioner, but you can go through other avenues as well. The Commissioner has a lot of advocates. You can actually go and talk to an advocate. You can actually get an advocate to go and talk to the doctor with you so that you can do a face-to-face discussion with the doctor and try and figure out why this happened. This Commissioner can investigate breaches of the code and prosecutes practitioners if there are serious breaches. There are 10 rights in the code, and they're pretty universal. They're very, very wide. These are just a few of the main ones that I've put here, and I don't think I need to read them to you. But the thing about the code is it applies to all health practitioners. So you can be an acupuncturist, you can be an aromatherapist, you can be a midwife, you can be a doctor, but everybody is subject to this particular code. And then we had a situation where we have, in 2003, they decided to reform the way the professions, the registered health practitioner professions are regulated. And they actually looked to Canada for this, so we can thank Canada for our, what we call an umbrella law, which covers all registered practitioners, but actually sets up by law each practitioner's council. So you have a council for each, so medical council, nursing council, midwifery council, dentistry council. And they are all separate, but they all operate under the same law, so they all have the same sort of systems. For midwifery, obviously, that's the Midwifery Council. So the beauty of that is that their main function of those councils is to protect the public. And they protect the public by regulating education, and I'll go on a bit more about that later. So, other ways of protecting women in childbirth include midwives, consumers, and lawyers. So the Midwifery Council has these as its focus, all of these functions. Every year, midwives have to go through a situation. We have to do an emergency, a day where we actually do emergency training, shoulder dystocia, postpartum hemorrhage, all those things, emergency breech births, resuscitation of the newborn, resuscitation of an adult, of a woman. That's just one thing. We also have standards of practice that we actually get measured against, and we have to have an interview with a midwife and a consumer every 2 years to talk about the statistics from our practice and to talk about the challenges we have in our practice. It's very, very comprehensive. I think because midwifery is always at risk and has always been at risk, we go overboard in making sure we do things right. So the College of Midwives then is a professional organisation. They give us the standards for practice. And they're a member of the International Confederation of Midwives, and they establish philosophy, ethics. And then there's the Health Practitioner Disciplinary Tribunal. So by the time people have complained to the Health and Disability Commission, the Health and Disability Commission discusses this with the Midwifery Council. They look at how this can be investigated in the best way. Sometimes the Health and Disability Commissioner will investigate it. Sometimes the Midwifery Council will investigate it. If they find that there is a serious case to answer, then it goes to the Health Practitioner Disciplinary Tribunal, which was set up by the same law that set up the councils. So this tribunal is for all health practitioners, but every time there is a case, it is actually dealt with by the peers of the person. So if you are a doctor, then there will be 3 doctors and a lawyer on the tribunal. If it's a midwife, there will be 3 midwives and a lawyer on the tribunal. The main principle is that you are judged by your peers and you're not judged against the standards of another discipline. And I'm a member of that council, of that. And we're not judged against absolutely ideal, perfect practice. We are judged against what is reasonable practice for a midwife and in the situation that that midwife is. So if you're a rural midwife transferring a woman maybe for 2 hours to a hospital and going with her, you would be judged by, you would have people on the tribunal who face those sort of situations. If you worked in a tertiary unit where you did all the high technical stuff, you would be judged by midwives who work in similar situations. Members of the tribunal are actually nominated by midwives and consumers, but they're chosen and appointed by the Minister of Health. And we have to say a big thank you to consumers, because it was women who got midwifery made autonomous again in New Zealand. And we work with women in partnership for their births and for also in the community as well. So we do have consumers on the tribunal, we do have consumers at every level in the professional organisations and in the Midwifery Council. And we promote consumer involvement in hospitals and in committees, but sometimes that's rather hard to achieve, because even though we have the best intentions in the world, and New Zealand maternity is not perfect, we have extremely strong obstetric authority in the hospitals. So even though we're going in with our clients and looking after our clients, and we don't have to have an obstetrician anywhere in sight, if there is a complication and they come in, then you're in a situation which is very hard to combat. So we still have a 24% caesarean section rate, much to our horror. We do a lot of VBACs, and we have a 12% episiotomy rate, which could be improved further. Thank you.
Our last presentation is Adriana Lamachkova from the Center for Reproductive Rights, and she's talking about fact-finding and reporting in human rights.
Thank you, Nora. I'd like to thank the conference organizers for inviting me to this important event. I represent the Center for Reproductive Rights, an international human rights advocacy organization established in 1992. And since then, we have used the law to advance reproductive freedom as a fundamental human right that all governments are obliged to respect, protect, and fulfill. The center works in various regions worldwide, including in Europe. And in Europe, we have traditionally worked in Central and Eastern Europe, focusing on issues such as access to contraceptive services and information, access to safe and legal abortion, and involuntary sterilizations of Romani women. Beyond Europe, the center has been working now for many years on quality maternal care and women's rights in that context. And the Europe program is just now also beginning working on the issue. In my presentation, I will try to bring us closer to human rights fact-finding and to highlight some of its key aspects. There are different fact-finding exercises. I will focus on human rights fact-finding conducted by NGOs, and more specifically in the context of reproductive rights. And my hope is that through this brief introduction, I will be able to contribute towards a discussion on effective strategies to advance women's rights in childbirth. I will speak about human rights fact-finding's definition, its objectives, methodology, and findings, and I will also briefly talk about follow-up strategies to human rights fact-finding. So, what is human rights fact-finding? According to the international guidelines on international human rights fact-finding visits and reports, fact-finding means a mission or visit mandated by an NGO to ascertain the relevant facts relating to and elucidating a situation of human rights concern, whether allegedly committed by state or non-state actors. In many instances, this activity will result in a report. These guidelines were prepared in 2009 by Raoul Wallenberg Institute and Lund University and by International Bar Association after wide consultations and a comprehensive analysis of fact-finding reports with the goal to contribute to good practice on the conduct of fact-finding and also on compilation of fact-finding reports. The guidelines address issues such as terms of reference for the mission, rules for compilation of fact-finding reports, and they also address working methods for human rights fact-finding. Non-governmental organizations have conducted human rights fact-finding on many human rights issues, including reproductive rights issues. For example, the Center, together with our partners in respective countries, conducted fact-finding missions on issues such as access to contraceptive services and information and related barriers in this access, impact of restrictive laws and policies related to abortion on women's health and rights, and involuntary sterilization of women on the basis of their ethnicity or HIV status. We have also documented violations of women's rights with regard to pregnancy and childbirth in public healthcare facilities. To demonstrate some of the points that I will be speaking about, I have chosen to refer to two fact-finding reports and related missions conducted by the Center and its partners. The first report is Body and Soul report on forced sterilizations of Romani women and other abuses that Romani women faced in public healthcare facilities in eastern Slovakia. And the second report uncovers women's rights violations in pregnancy in public healthcare facilities in Kenya, but that report also focuses on barriers in access to family planning and safe abortion. All these fact-finding missions have certain key objectives that could be summarized in 4 points. The first objective is to raise public awareness about a particular problem then to frame this issue as a human rights violation, and so also to raise public awareness about human rights perspectives of that particular problem. And the other objective is to hold those accountable, responsible for the harm, and then also to propose concrete set of measures, recommendations to the government and other stakeholders to adopt measures that would prevent those violations from happening in future. To achieve the goal of identifying rights violations, NGOs have used different working methods. But the most typical ones are collecting the testimonies from the survivors and other stakeholders where possible, and gathering information from other sources, whether it's available publications already written on the issue, and also assessing the local laws and policies and practices related to the issue. Sometimes what may happen, and happen in the case of Body and Soul, that the objectives might be changed during the fact-finding mission, or not really changed, but slightly revised or expanded. And in the Body and Soul case, or the Slovakia case, what happened was that the goal of the fact-finding, or the initial goal of focusing on alleged cases of forced and coerced sterilizations of Romani women, expanded when the research team realized that there were other interrelated human rights abuses that merited documentation. So besides involuntary sterilization cases, the research team documented instances of segregation in gynecological and maternity wards in eastern Slovakia. They also documented problems in accessing medical records, and also physical and verbal abuse. The research team also documented stereotypical beliefs of healthcare providers about Romani women's and men's sexuality, and hostile and judgmental attitudes toward Romani women. Just to demonstrate it by one example from a gynecologist who was also interviewed during the fact-finding mission, and who commented on a difference between a birth by a Roma woman and a birth by a non-Roma woman. He told the research team, "Romani women give birth quite easily. More intelligent women give birth with more difficulty. It is something in the brain." Other problems faced specifically by women from segregated settlements that are located far from the public transportations are difficulties in accessing hospitals. And this applies also to emergency situations where pregnant women called an ambulance, and an ambulance never arrived. Similarly, in the case of failure to deliver, the report on violations of women's human rights in Kenyan healthcare facilities, numerous human rights abuses have been documented during the fact-finding mission, and those include physical and verbal abuse in a maternity hospital in Nairobi. It is the biggest hospital in Nairobi, but these practices also have been seen in other hospitals in Kenya. And the physical abuse included having to wait extended period of time for suturing after birth, which was often done with insufficient or no anesthesia. Women being left to give birth alone without any medical assistance, and also did not receive any medical assistance after childbirth. And there were also instances of women and their babies being detained in healthcare facilities for not being able to pay medical bills. And in some cases, some women have been detained for several weeks. I would like to finish the presentation with follow-up strategies to fact-finding mission and reporting. Fact-finding is not an end in itself, but it is a vehicle in a broader strategy to achieve individual redress, but also systematic change with regard to a particular issue. With regard to body and soul, the findings of the report have been, just shortly after the report was launched, the government adopted changes to the legislation, to the regulation on informed consent with sterilization, and also regulation on access to medical records. And these changes were adopted even before lawsuits that have been filed on domestic level by the Slovak NGO Poradňa pre občianske a ľudské práva. Before these lawsuits were decided. So you can see a direct link between launching the report and the findings and this legislative change. As I said, several lawsuits have been filed. Some of them ended up at the European Court of Human Rights. The European Court found violation of the rights to be free from inhuman and degrading treatment and to respect for private life as a result of the fact that women were sterilized while giving birth via cesarean section in public healthcare facilities without providing informed consent. With regard to the failure to deliver report, the findings have been used in submissions to the UN treaty monitoring bodies. My colleague Lia Höchter will be speaking this afternoon about reporting mechanisms at the CEDAW committee. So these UN bodies have issued strong concluding observations and recommendations to the Kenyan government with regard to the findings of the failure to deliver. The center, together with our partner in Kenya, filed 2 lawsuits to national courts, and we also filed a request for public inquiry to Kenyan National Human Rights Commission. This request was filed in 2009, and the Commission conducted a public inquiry into violations of women's sexual and reproductive rights in Kenya, which resulted in a very comprehensive, more than 200 pages report by the Commission on sexual and reproductive rights in Kenya. As stated in the report, the aim of the inquiry was to establish the extent and nature of violation of sexual and reproductive rights and to recommend appropriate redress measures. The Commission recommended a set of fundamental recommendations to the government and other stakeholders to adopt measures to ensure effective realization of reproductive rights of women in Kenya. And I wanted to bring up this specific mechanism, national human rights institutions, as in, also in Central and Eastern Europe, those institutions exist as well. And to finish this presentation with sort of an food for thought to think how other accountability mechanisms beyond courts could be used to advance women's rights in childbirth, whether these are national human rights institutions, equality or non-discrimination bodies, ombudspersons or other medical professional bodies. Thank you for your attention, and I brought some samples of fact-finding reports by the Center and our partners that are back at the table for display, just to have a better idea of what I was actually talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a 10-minute coffee break, so please drink your coffees quickly and come back after 10 minutes because we really have to be quick. And one more thing, somebody may have taken home a headset yesterday. If you took home a headset, I won't get angry, just tell me so that I know, because one is lost.